So in this video, we're just practicing using some of those properties of logarithms that you just learned, the power rule, the quotient rule, and the product rule. So the first 8 problems deal with condensing logarithms, and the key is that it says rewrite as a single logarithm. Therefore, there should only be one log in your answer. And typically you use the power rule first, if appropriate, which it is in this first example. So this 2 will get moved around to the back. So that becomes log of 6 squared minus log of 9. And again, you're dealing with the common log, the base 10, which you don't see. So then that's log of 36 minus log of 9. And to condense, we use the quotient rule, which says you have the log of the first term becomes the numerator, the second term becomes the denominator, and then simplifying or reducing, that becomes log of 4. On the next one, again, power rule. So we're moving the powers from the front to the back. So we have log base 4 of a to the 4th plus log base 4 of b squared. And then since you're adding 2 logs together, you're going to use the product rule to condense them. So that will be log base 4. I typically put my product in parentheses, but you don't absolutely have to. That's a to the 4th times b squared. And since you've got those variables, that's all you can do. Same kind of thing here. The 7 and the 3 will go around to the back. So you have log base 4 of u minus log base 4 of v. Now, since that v already had the power that was squared, you're moving that 3 around to the back to be with that squared. You're going to multiply those 2 powers together, and that's going to be v to the 6th power. And then since you have 2 logs being subtracted, you'll condense them using division or the quotient rule. So log base 4 of, oh, I forgot to take my 7 around to the back, didn't I? Log base 4 of u to the 7th over v to the 6th. And again, a lot of the time I will put mine in parentheses just to make sure that whoever's looking at my paper, or if I'm working something out, just to make sure that I remember that that expression belongs to that log. And then you just kind of continue in that same manner. If you have multiple logarithms, as we see in number 22, you just work from the left to the right unless you have grouping symbols. So I'm going to look at these first 2 to begin with first, just moving from left to right. So if I've got 2 logs that are being added, I can condense them together using multiplication. So that will be log of 15 times 4. And then bring down the other piece. And as some of you are more visual and can see things coming together and go ahead and multiply things in your head, you are more than welcome to do that. But that will be log base 2 of 60 minus log base 2 of 6. And now to condense those, I've got 2 logs that are being subtracted, so I'm going to put them together using division. So that's going to be log base 2 of 64, since that was the first term, over 6. Actually, that's 60, I'm sorry. 15 times 4 is 60. I apologize. And then you can simplify or reduce that fraction, log base 2 of 10. On number 24, again, we are using multiple rules. I'm going to, like I said previously, I'm going to use the power rule first. So the first log doesn't have a power, neither does the second, but the third one does. So that 1/2 is going to go around to the back. Now, at this point, you can go ahead if you want to and say, well, I know that the 1/2 power means take the square root of this number. And if you can go ahead and tell yourself, well, that number is really just going to be a 7, because 49 to the 1/2 power, or the square root of 49, that's 7. That can maybe save you a little bit of writing along the way, because now you just have 3 logs that are being added. So to condense those, I'm going to multiply. So we'll have log base 3 of 4 times y times 7. And since you can multiply in any order you choose, that's going to be log base 3 of 28y. And again, I will usually put those in parentheses. On number 24, I would go ahead, since you've got grouping symbols here, parentheses, I would combine those together first. And since you have 2 logs that are being added, you can condense those using multiplication. And 8 times 27 is 216. Okay. And then, since I no longer really have grouping symbols, I can deal with that power. I can move that 1/3 power around to the back to be the power on the 216. And just like before, if you remember, realize that this 1/3 power means the cube root, and the cube root of 216 is really just 6, then you can actually nearly complete your problem from here, because now you have 2 logs being subtracted, so you can condense those using division or the quotient rule. So you'll have log base 5 of, and that 6 is the first term, so it goes in the numerator. The 3 is the second term, it goes into the denominator. And 6 over 3 can be reduced to just 2. So log base 5 of 2. And then just to continue on, I'll move that 3 around to the back. So log base 2 of 4 cubed minus log base 2 of 32. You've got 2 logs that you're going to condense using the quotient rule, since those 2 logs are being subtracted. So that means I'll have log base 2 of, and then 4 cubed is the first term, so 4 cubed is 64. I'm going to go ahead and put that on top. And then 32 is with my second log, so that 32 goes in the bottom. And 64 over 32 is just 2. So I'll have log base 2 of 2. But at that, then once you see you've got some common values, you think, oh, well, 2 to the what power gives me 2. So to completely simplify that, that will just be 1, because 2 to the first power gives me 2. And then lastly, I'm going to deal with my power rules first. So if I take that 2 around to the back, that's going to be log of 6 squared, or log of 36, minus log, and that's going to be 16 to the 1/4 power. And if 1/4 power means the 4th root, the 4th root of 16 is 2, so that's going to be a minus log of 2 plus a log of 3. And again, you just go from left to right with order of operations. So you combine or condense the first 2 logs using the quotient rule. So log of, you'd have 36 over 2, which will be 18 momentarily, plus log of 3. And then you've got 2 logs that are being added, so you can condense those using multiplication or the product rule. So as we said, or as I said just a second ago, that's 18, and that's 3. So 18 times 3 is 54. So number 26 condenses to simply the log of 54. So as we look at the problems on the bottom, there aren't quite as many. if we do not get to all of them, that's okay. I'm going to try to do the ones that will best cover the three rules. As we look at the first one, you've got the log of a product. So you're going to separate each of those pieces using addition. So log base 6 of x plus log base 6 of y plus log base 6 of z to the fourth. And do be careful because that 4 is the power on the z and only the z. So then I do need to use my power rule, but remembering that that 4 is only with the z. And again, that 4 then comes around to the front. We're using the power rule in reverse of what we did just a couple of minutes ago. On the next one, I'm going to use the quotient rule first because I have two things that are being divided. So I'll separate that out using subtraction. So log base 4 of a to the ninth, again, whatever's on top comes first, minus log base 4 of b, whatever is in the denominator comes second. And then just using that power rule in reverse, bringing the 9 around to the front. So 9 log base 4 of a minus log base 4 of b. As we look at 29 and 30, they're essentially the same types of problems, but because you've got powers raised to powers, if you bring this power around to the front first, sometimes it becomes a little confusing as to how to deal with it later in the problem because you've got more things that you are trying to expand. So if it were me on 29 and on 30, I would give that power on the outside away to what is inside first. And what I mean by that, I would have log base 7 of q to the 8th, because when you have a power to a power, you multiply. And then I would have r to the 4th. Because again, sometimes if you use that power rule, when you have things that you're going to split apart later, it becomes questionable as to what you do with something that you bring out front when you start to split these things apart. So if you go ahead and give away that power, then that's one less thing you have to consider later. So now, since I have log of a product, I'm going to expand that using addition. So I'll have log base 7 of q to the 8th plus log base 7 of r to the 4th. And then I can use the power rule and bring those powers to the front. I don't have to worry about multiplying them by anything or making sure they get distributed to whatever that's already happened. So we will have 8 log base 7 of q plus 4 log base 7 of r. And number 30 would be very, very similar. I would give that power of 2 away to the numerator and the denominator first, and then expand by using the quotient rule instead of the product rule. On 31, and on 32, since you've got radicals, you need to rewrite those as powers first, making sure that you put the power with the appropriate base. So since that's a square root, I can rewrite that as log of 7x cubed, all raised to the 1/2 power. Again, both of those terms get the 1/2 power because since both of those were under the radical. And then I would do something similar as I did on number 29, and I would go ahead and give that power away to both pieces so that that doesn't become confusing later. So 7 to the 1/2, x to the, that will be 3/2 when you multiply your powers. And then because you have log of a product, you're going to separate those using addition. So you'll have log of 7 to the 1/2 power plus log of x to the 3/2 power, and then you will need to bring those powers around to the front, which will give you 1/2 log of 7 plus 3 halves log of x.